Welcome to the first episode of Biz Tech Twist. I'm your host, Bob Coppedge, aka the Crotchety Old Geek. And let's find out about what we're going to be doing here. So again, Bob Coppedge. I'm the CEO, founder, head geek, whatever, over at Simplex-IT. We're in Stowe, Ohio. We're a managed service provider, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means in a few. But why am I doing this? So first of all, a little bit about my background. I am, and we're going to get a little bit technical here, but you can Google the term if you need to. I am old. I'm actually around 64 years old, and I've been in IT since around 1978, 1979. So I have been through a lot. Again, old. And I have worn just about every hat there is. I've been a developer. I've been a network guy. I have been a lot of database work, application development, CEO of companies like Simplex-IT, CIO, Chief Information Officer. Worked in just about every industry there is. I've written books. We'll get to that. I've written articles, and also have a long history in the user group world. For those of you who can ask your parents, user groups used to be the way that we learned about IT. I mean, this is before the internet. Ask your parents again. And what ended up happening is we got together, and the Greater Cleveland Peace User Group was one of my favorite organizations. And I was president. We had about 1,200 members, and we met over 40 times a month because there was no other way to learn about IT. Well, then the internet happened. And since then, the user group has kind of gone on the wayside. But I'm still a firm believer in that collectively we can help each other learn and do so in a positive way. So started Simplex-IT in around 2007, and part of our goal has been we want to make IT easier. We want to simplify the complex. And the reason we say that is because so many times we want to take a complicated function for an end user, for an organization, and make it as simple as possible. But in order to do that, we have to have a lot of complex things going on underneath. And that's especially true with cybersecurity becoming such an issue. And we'll talk about that in future episodes. But I've also got a history in theater. I'm also a graduate of Second City. That's because they cashed my checks. And also did about 15 years of improvisational comedy as well as theater work and the like. Also did radio, done some other things along those lines. So I have a different perspective on how to communicate and how to talk to people. And I've been speaking to companies, organizations, conferences around the world for years, mostly on IT or security topics or the like, but a lot on the co-managed world. And you'll hear about that as well. The term, again, we've got is Crotchety Old Geek. And the reason that term seems to work is because I am not subtle. If you are looking for someone to sugarcoat things, I am not the go-to person. But I do want to help, and I do want to share, and I do want to try to learn from my experiences and help other people learn with their experiences, especially when it comes to business and technology. And that's kind of why this is created. Now, if you go up and you learn more about me at simplex-it.com/Bob, you'll also, I think there's links to my YouTube channels and the like, and you'll actually see a couple hundred videos because I am a big believer in sharing knowledge, not selling, but sharing. And the reason I got that is actually an interesting story that I've told way too many times, but I used to be the CIO, head geek of a company that manufactured sunrooms. And there was this one sales guy, and I may get in trouble if he hears this story, who was one of the most successful salespeople I've ever known in my life. And he was also one of the laziest people I've ever known in my life. One day, this was back in the 90s, I asked him, I said, how are you so successful? And he said every year around springtime, he would get out to all of the continuing adult education centers, and he would go out and do a one-night session on how to install and build your own sunroom. And he said he would do everything he possibly could to teach people how to do it. He would talk about foundations, about glass types, about working with permits, all of that kind of good stuff. And this was back in the 90s, so this is before the internet. At the end of this evening, and he did everything he could to teach them how to do it, nobody in their right mind would want to install and build their own sunroom. So what would they do? They would go and talk to him because he was honest. He was helpful. He was not trying to sell. And that's been our mantra at Simplex-IT for 15 years now. And it's also going to be the mantra here for this podcast. We're not going to try to sell anything. In fact, sometimes we may not even be talking about technology, but we are going to focus on business and technology, but from different perspectives. And I was taking a look in what to do. And webinars are tough because you're usually focusing on a particular topic, and it's hard to get that real good give and take on that kind of thing. And you take a look at all the YouTube channels and most of the stuff that's out there, and a lot of it is just on either selling or selling a perspective, a single perspective over and over and over again, which is great. But in a lot of cases, we get stuck. We get stuck on our perspective. We get stuck with thinking about things with one particular view, one particular part of our brain working on it. And what I like is bringing a different view, bringing a different perspective. And sometimes that additional perspective is courtesy of history, courtesy of philosophy, courtesy of science, courtesy of math, courtesy of totally different industries. And that's what I want to try to do. Now, it's not just going to be me. We're also, we've actually lined up the first 3 guests already. We're going to have guests that are either going to be based on the IT industry or based in Northeast Ohio. But the bottom line is these are people who are going to be experts in their particular field, but who are also willing to talk about it from a different perspective. And I think we're going to have some fun doing that. So we're going to talk about that from using the term twist. That's why Biz Tech Twist. What's an example of that? Well, organizations who face significant change because of a disruptive action, and this could be loss of a major client, a competitor comes up with a clearly superior product, a critical person in the group, organization either leaves or suddenly is incapacitated. So a company with no planning ahead of time suddenly has to change drastically and quickly. Well, that happened on December 7th, 1941. When the United States Navy, which was a battleship navy, everyone was trained with ships having particular roles, found themselves dramatically having to change to an aircraft carrier navy. And it wasn't easy. It didn't happen immediately, but it happened. Those are the kind of lessons, those are the kind of perspectives that I want to try to bring when we talk about future episodes of this podcast. And when we do that, we're going to do this weekly. That's the plan. And the idea is basically going to be, we're going to have introductions. We're going to be talking about, again, traditional business topics, traditional technology topics for the most part, but with a different perspective. You ever think about Sherlock Holmes, how he would have handled cybercrime? Yeah. Anyway, we'll get to that. And I did want to mention, I do have 3 books out. My first book is CEO's Survival Guide to Information Technology. That's written specifically for CEOs who don't want to become geeks, but they do have to understand enough of IT so that they can have good conversations with their IT resources. My second book is titled The MSP's Survival Guide to Co-Managed IT Services. The field of co-managed IT services is one where instead of a managed service provider like Simplex-IT, replacing an entire internal IT organization for a company, we actually partner with them. It is still relatively new, and I'm proud to say that I've actually written the only 2 books on the topic, and I frequently speak, whether it be on podcasts or at conferences or the like, on that topic throughout our industry. My third book is I Don't Want Your Job. Is Co-Managed IT Services the Right Fit for You? That was written specifically for the internal IT person because, quite honestly, the managed service industry was built on the idea that we will replace you. We can do a better and cheaper job than the internal IT folks. And that kind of was true 15, 20 years ago. But now, often is not. You put the 2 teams together, that's where the magic happens if we're all together on the same page. That's going to be one of our topics. All 3 of those books are available on Amazon. The first book, CEO Survival Guide to Information Technology, is actually available on Audible with my voice. Yeah, that's traumatic. But check those out. And also, like I said, we've also got the videos up on YouTube. Simplex-IT.com/Bob is my bio. And essentially, this is pretty much all I've got for the first episode. And look forward to talking to you in the future. And as always, remember, like, share, comment, subscribe, stalk, that kind of fun stuff. Take care.